Welcome. We're Alicia
and Whitney
on Coming Up Higher, where we're creating space through conversations, special guests, and inspiration
for you to come up higher in the things of Christ in everyday life. Hey everyone, welcome to Coming Up Higher. We are Alicia and Whitney, and today we're talking to a dear friend of ours, Mrs. Beverly Blankenship, Pastor Bev, as we like to call her. She pastors the church at Full Faith Ministries in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and she is a powerhouse, and she's a sassy little thing that obviously that's why we love her. One of the many reasons why we love her. But she's just an incredible pastor, awesome friend, and she gives us just a really encouraging message today about how God just wants to be with us and how he desires. He didn't create us as human doings. He created us as human beings. And what a life like that looks like with God when we set aside our to-do lists and the plans that we have and the ways that we think our life should go or where we should be by now. What life looks like when we set those aside and just ask God, what do you have for me today? What does life look like? What desires have you put in my heart that you want to fulfill? And I just think the word that she gave today is just so needed right now, and it'll be an encouragement. So I'm excited to have you meet our friend, Pastor Bev, and let's just jump in. Hey, Come Up crew, welcome back to another week of Coming Up Higher. We are so excited that you're joining us today because one of the things we love about our ministry is just getting to travel and meet amazing people.
Yeah.
God just connects us with just incredible relationships wherever we go. And it's just one of those things that when you know it's a God relationship, when you meet and it feels like you've known each other forever and you can't picture life without like knowing these people. And our guest on the show today is definitely one of these people, her and her husband. We have Pastor Beverly Blankenship, and she's married to Dave, who's an awesome guy, and they are pastoring over at Full Faith Church, Full Faith Ministries in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and that's actually where we met them and where we enjoy coming back usually once a year or so and partaking in the service. So, Pastor Bev, we just want to say welcome to Coming Up Higher. We're so glad you're here.
Well, I listen to you all the time, and I never thought that you'd invite me to be a guest, but I was glad to have the opportunity and be here with you girls. You always look like you're having a lot of fun.
Oh, good, because we do enjoy what we do, so I'm glad that translates. So, well, we want to just dive in. One of the main themes that you were talking about was, just God uses those that may feel like they're unqualified, or he uses those that just feel maybe like, God, I can't believe you're asking me to do this or calling me to do this. But do you find that overall theme in your testimony of life, where you find yourself now as a pastor and of a great congregation? But did you feel that way, of have those moments of, God, you're really calling me, you're really asking me to do this? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And what the Lord has just been telling me in this season in my life, what he's been showing me and teaching me, is that it has to be okay to just be vulnerable. You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to try new things. You have to be willing to take chances. And, when I was young, I could do that very easily, but I'm 59 years old now, and I don't, those aren't the things that I thought I'd be doing, and that's what I'm doing all the time, all the time. I mean, I am doing things now that I never in a million jillion years would have ever thought that I would be doing, and pastoring is one of those things. I never had a desire to pastor. I never thought about the role of a pastor. The way I grew up, truly what I thought was, they were special people called by God to help a lot of people with their problems, to go through the roughest times in their life, and they received very little pay for doing so. And that's pretty much what I thought about a pastor. I never thought too much past that. That was especially when I was making life choices and career choices. My father was an accountant, and I was trained to be an accountant, and I went to school to be an accountant. And when you account for things, things line up. You have a plan, you have a checklist.
Right.
And pastor is a whole new world. You don't get a checklist. You don't even get lines or graphs. It's bad. It's bad. So when I turned 21 years old, I married David, and he's a wonderful guy. But 7 years after we were married, we lived in Houston, Texas, a big city, and we had a nice home, and we had a 5-year-old daughter. And, I worked as an accountant downtown Houston, and I would leave my house every morning 6:30 or 7 in the morning, and I would drive that 15 or 16 miles that took about an hour.
Oh,
you
wow.
know that's the way it is in big cities with traffic. And I would leave there at night about 6:30 and drive that hour home, and get home and cook supper and bathe my child and put her to bed, and do any little other thing that I could squeeze into a day, and fall in bed exhausted and get up the next morning and do the very same thing. And, besides all of that, and all my other coworkers did just the same things. And besides all that, we went to church on Sunday mornings. We went to church on Sunday nights. We went to church on Wednesday nights. And so one day, one of my girlfriends said to me, "Hey, you want to start taking Bible classes with me?" And so just because I needed another thing to do, no, that's
Right.
not why. Just because I wanted to, just because I wanted to break the routine and, have maybe a day or a night to myself and get away from the things that I was typically doing, I said yes. And I started going to seminary classes with her, and we would go once or twice a week in the evenings. And I did that for years. And then, I stopped doing that and went and took evangelism classes. And I want to tell you, girls, I promise you, never in a million years did I think that God would ever use it for God, because the truth of it was I was doing it for Beverly. I was doing it for myself, because, I truly enjoyed the challenge. I truly enjoyed learning. I truly enjoyed, the time I had to take for myself to be in a book and not taking care of my family or something else. I enjoyed that. It was all selfish, girls. I'll just tell you, that's the truth of that. My kids didn't even know I went to seminary. It wasn't something we ever talked about. It was just a selfish time in my life that even God knew that and used that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you about some selfish time for sure. My husband and I, about that same time, we played on a volleyball league at the church. So our church against all these other churches in Houston. And so on Friday nights, we would go and play volleyball. And so one Friday night, we're playing volleyball. And when it was, we were waiting for our turn to get on the court, I heard this other team talking about where they were going to go. And they were all going as a church to Eureka Springs, and they were talking about the Passion Play. And God put me right there in that gymnasium with those people, because he knows me. He created me. You know what I did? I said, well, if y'all are real Christians and you're my brothers and sisters in Christ, you would be taking us on that trip and telling us all about it. And guess what? They had to invite us, because I put it out there, and it was kind of loud. Yeah. So, the truth of that was, it was selfish. I wanted to go on vacation. That sounded like a cool thing that they were talking about. And I didn't have any money. So this way I'm going to split the gas. I'm going to split the expenses, and I have a babysitter right there with me, But God knew. He knew if I heard about that, I'd figure out a way to get there. And so we came to Eureka Springs with that church group, 30 years ago. And my husband came home from that trip and he said, Beverly, that's where the Lord wants us to live.
Wow.
I said, Dave, I'm sorry that you didn't hear from the Lord correctly, but that was not incorrect. There's no way that that's what you heard. And I just went on. And the very next summer, my brother and sister-in-law, they had bought a new motorhome and they were going to go to Branson, Missouri. And this is funny. And looked it up on the map, and Branson, Missouri wasn't too far from Eureka Springs. So here again, I'm going to finagle away that Dave and I are going to get to go. Well, they weren't letting us with, my child and everything going on into their brand new motorhome. But Dave and I took one of those, what was it? Timeshares, if you go and you tour this timeshare and you listen to this spiel, they were going to give us 4 nights and 5 days stay at this hotel in Branson, Missouri. And that's how Dave and I came the second year. And, I wasn't new to that. I could do anything. If I wanted to go somewhere, I could figure out a way. But you see, it was all, selfish to me, and God's, what he's trying to say is, people always want to know, well, what's God's plan for me? And I just, what I'm figuring out when I'm almost 60 years old, it's just be who I created you to be vulnerable to walk through the door I opened for you, listen to me, stay connected to me, and I will make your life amazing.
Yeah.
And so, we vacationed here every year for 7 years. And every year we would go home and Dave would say, Beverly, that's where the Lord wants us to live. And we had a son by this time. And at year 6, I said to him, you know what, we're going to fix this. I said, let's get together on the floor right here in this house. We're all going to pray about it. And I'll just tell you the truth, girls. I was praying, Lord, could you fix my husband? Because he has heard this incorrectly.
We all do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I said, there's no way that this could be what you're saying to us. So could you fix my husband? And that's what I prayed. And then things started happening in my heart. Never before had I ever considered it truly. And then I started thinking and dreaming and saying, what would it look like if our kids went to a small school? What would it be like to live in a small town? Could I really, what would I do, Lord? What would we do? And he knows us, he made us. My husband's very creative and I'm an accountant. So, if he gave us a challenge of opening a business, I will try it. I will try anything once. And so that's pretty much what he did. He gave us the opportunity to move to Eureka Springs and open up a business. And we found out later that the Chamber of Commerce had, we're a tourist town here in Eureka Springs. And for years and years and years, they sold, T-shirts and coonskin caps and corncob pipes and handmade candles and handmade brooms and dulcimers and, just Ozarky things. And Dave and I came here with a dream in our heart to open up a furniture store. And so it was all new, all different. The people thought we were crazy Texans, that we're going to lose everything. And they were just going to watch it happen. The Chamber of Commerce took, votes on how long that they took bets on how long they thought that we could last. And the longest time that anybody gave us was 6 months.
Goodness.
And God just, it didn't matter what anybody thought about it because the Lord put that in our heart and he grew it and he had favor, and I don't think I could have messed it up. There were times when I couldn't pay the mortgage, and the people from the church would just come and pray, and the next day somebody would come in and buy a bedroom suit. That
Wow.
happened many, many, many times. And, God just taught me that he's a faithful God, and
Hmm.
he will walk us through stuff. And he did it through this business, and he knew I could be a business person. And then he had me set on the city council. I was on city council and then the government of Eureka Springs for 10 years. I ran for mayor a couple of times.
Wow.
But he had me to learn all about city government, state government, so that I could understand truly the kingdom authority that I had.
That's
Wow.
He
good.
gave me all this training when I didn't even know he was using me or teaching me. I was just being. I
Yeah.
didn't know his plan. If I'd have known his plan from the beginning, I would have ran from it all the
Yeah.
way opposite the direction,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many people, so many people say, well, I just want to know what God wants me to do. And I hope if they're listening today, they hear me say, God just wants you to be.
That's so
Just
good.
be who he created you to be and be connected to him. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I can't even, somebody told me yesterday, a prophet friend of mine said, you don't even know enough to know what you're supposed to be scared of. And I said, you know what? Don't ever tell me, because it's all right. I'm doing fine. I don't know. I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a pastor. So I didn't try to learn to be a pastor or do what I thought pastors were supposed to do.
Yeah.
I just be. I just be who
That's
he
good.
created me to be. And I
Yeah.
tell my congregation all the time, in this house, this is the practice field.
Yeah.
We're okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to try it. We're going to try all our gifts, all of them working together. We're going to try it. If we make a mess, if we make a mistake, so what? We all love each other. We'll forgive each
Right.
other. We'll help each other get back on the right track. Just be who you're created to be. Because if you can't do it in the church house, you're not going to do it outside.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
they have a lot of grace with me. They have a lot of
Well,
grace with me
I
because
think
they
we need to
know.
I think that's so important because it's like we need to have grace with each other and grace with ourselves because so often people are like, I don't, like you were talking about, I don't want to make the wrong mistake, or what if I do this, or, I'm really praying about this or that. And it's just like sometimes like we kind of use prayer as a kind of like a safety net. Like, well, I'm still waiting and I'm praying about it, which, we believe in prayer and fasting. So don't get me wrong there. But like sometimes we use that to stay in our little box or stay isolated or don't step out to be vulnerable, and I've seen that before, but God's just saying, why don't, follow my leading, follow my presence, of course, with prayer, but like, don't don't be so worked up about like that you're going to be making a mistake every time you turn around, or that you're going to blow something with your whole life if you make the wrong turn or you do this or that. And it's just like, that's what I love about your testimony, is just like, well, I wanted to get out of the house and from out of my routine, so I went to seminary classes, or like I wanted to go on vacation, so I I invited myself along on this trip, and I love that because God, when we're in relationship with him, when we want to seek his face and or in his word and just want to do right by him and are in relationship with him, he blesses it, and ultimately we're going to end up where he wants us as when we stay connected to the vine, when we stay connected to him. And so I think that's really good.
When I was young, I didn't do it with pure motives. I did it
Mm-hmm.
with wrong motives, but
Mm-hmm.
God still used it. He still taught me from it,
Yeah.
because I could look back now and say, that was so selfish. And he said, that's okay. I know you. I made you.
Yeah. Well,
It
and
took a while for me to learn it.
what I love about that too, though, is like God, those are desires. It sounds like to me that God put in you, God put in your heart, and but how you went about navigating those and accomplishing those may have been, out of your motives, but yet God knew he was going to place you in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So he routed you to get there. He knew that you'd be speaking and being a pastor later on in life, even when you didn't know. And so maybe the way that you went about it you see as being selfish, but God put that in you and was going to prepare you one way or the other because he knew what was going to lie ahead. And I just think just a self-awareness of what is it, because, you're talking about being and not doing. We're human beings. We're not human doings. And I think if we as Christians could just be a little more self-aware of that and think, okay, what is it that I want to do? What desires do I have? What am I drawn towards? Because when we're Christians and we're submitting our life to God and giving it all to him, then, the word says he'll give us the desires of our heart. And that doesn't just mean, oh, I want a car or I want a house and, I get everything I want kind of thing. It's like, no, he will actually create the desires in your heart and those will come to pass. So I think if we can, if we're in that surrendered state with God and then can just take the time to think, okay, what is it that I'm passionate about? I've always been passionate about the homeless in my community, or I've always really wanted to open up a food pantry, or I've wanted to serve, as like in local government. Like if we start taking the time to actually sit down and just focus on not my to-do list, not all the things I have to do at work or get the kids here or there or cook dinner, or like whatever it is, if we can just set a little time aside a week or a month or whatever and just think, okay, what is it that you have for me, God? What is it that I desire? I think some pretty impacting things could come from that. I think we would see more Christians in government. I think we would see them starting more businesses or stepping out and trying new things, because all of a sudden we've moved from a state of just survival mode and existing and just getting things done to actually being the people that God created us to be.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said about the desires of your heart, because after we had lived in Eureka Springs for about, 4 or 5 years, I understood that scripture fully. The Lord just showed me, I have given you the desires of your heart because I put those desires in there. I'm just now showing you, what they truly were. Mm-hmm. Never, had I lived in a small town. I lived in Houston, Texas. There's more people there than the whole state of Arkansas. Oh, wow. So, I didn't know what small town life was. I didn't know that I had stress in my life. I didn't know that I was on, a treadmill of, drudgery. I didn't know any of those. And one day it was foggy and it was rainy, and I was just looking out at the mountainside, and the Lord said, I have given you the desires of your heart because I put them in there. You just had to slow down long enough to see. And it was a beautiful moment that I'll never forget. And we do have to stop on the list, We have such of a list of what we think that we should be doing, or we think that we have to accomplish, or we think we have to get done. God's, if you'll just move the list out of the side, or at least let him erase it, have an eraser for an hour or something, he will do amazing things, because God gives us things in the natural so we can understand things in the spiritual. And so, I'm 59 years old and I am having a lot of firsts in my life. It's the first time being a pastor. That started happening 3 years ago. This year, for the first time in history, my grown kids, so 4 grown kids, 6 adults, and a baby, we all got together and took a family vacation to the beach. Aww. Was that scary? Yes. Was it rocky at times? Yes. Did it fill my heart to overflowing? Yes. All because, and none of us knew how it was going to work out. None of us, but we all had to be open enough and vulnerable enough. And they saw my heart's desire and they said, yes, Mom, we don't know how this is going to turn out, but if this is what you want, we will do it, and it was beautiful. And we learned a lot about each other, and we learned, we didn't have to just be 30 minutes here or 30 minutes there. We got to spend some time and talk one-on-one, and that's priceless. I would have paid everything I had to have that. And I went parasailing.
Wow.
And in my mind, it looked like something I was gonna love, and it was gonna be great. So I really wanted to do it, but you never know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband's like, do you really have to go and do this? Yeah, let me go. We have a saying in my house that I say, I'd love to live life in the fast lane, but I'm married to a speed bump. And he says, I take my job very seriously, because you'd have died 7 times over if I wouldn't have been there to be your speed bump. So, we take care of each other. And now have gone parasailing 3 times in my life because I went with each of my children because I loved it, but I didn't know if I first went up, if I would have seen that big, turtle in the ocean or a shark in the ocean, if I'd have just been terrified and not ever wanted to do it again. But I had to be okay with either way. I'm going to try it. If I hate it, I'll never do it again. If I love it, I'll do it every chance I get,
Yeah.
And a lot of things are happening like that in my life. And somebody gave us a camper. Somebody gave us an RV.
That's awesome.
That doesn't happen, but it happened in my life. Dave and I have never been camping. Okay. My idea of camping is like at a hotel that doesn't have room service. That would be camping.
Right.
So Dave and I and our dog went camping a couple of weekends ago, and it was almost like that movie RV. It was bad. We had a lot of things that could have gone wrong, went wrong. And it was okay though. We tried it. We didn't totally give up on it yet. We might try it a couple more times before we give up on it.
Yeah.
I got to play in the water. I went on the boat. That part was great. And so, you just got to give yourself grace to be okay with whatever God is putting in front of you. Go through the door, be willing to take the chance. We get so caught up in our perceived ideas of what it should look like or what we shouldn't do, or what's the right thing, that we forget to take time and ask God, what do you have planned for me today?
Yeah.
He tells us that he came that we might have abundant life. And I don't know what abundant life looks like to you, but it is not just treading water to me. He is showing me abundant life. He is giving me new things. He is opening new doors. This is my first time I've ever done a podcast. So you just never know what's going to happen in my life. And I told my kids that. Yeah. Who thought? When you asked me to do it, I'm like, what are we going to talk about?
I knew we would come up with something.
Me.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, it's encouraging for me to hear you talking about this, because this is something that God's like been dealing with me as well, of just trying new things and just always being hard on myself. Like if I don't get it right the first time, or if I fail or I mess up and have to be corrected a little bit, it would just, devastate me, or, oh my gosh. And so you just kind of get into an autopilot or just keeps doing the same pattern. But God has so much more. You're talking about that abundant life. Like he does have so much more. I know earlier on in our ministry, when I was younger, like I never wanted to even leave the United States. Like I was cool, just traveling to the places I'd always been and just staying. I was a homebody, but then like God exposed me to leaving the country and doing missions work, and just how much richer my life is because I took that step. I was afraid, but I did it. And just how much God's opened up my mind and my life, and even the people we've met overseas and helped, like now are friends that I can connect with on the internet. And like, it's just amazing if we can just give ourselves grace. And I think I've heard a message before where they were talking about, sometimes we see God as just this like angry God that if you mess up, like he's gonna point you out and just whip you or correct you kind of thing. But he was like, as a parent, what do you do when your child is first learning how to walk? Like if they fall or if they stumble, do you just get in their face and yell, you need to get up? Why? I can't believe you can't walk by now. Like you're 1.5 or 2, whatever, But we don't, as parents, like no parent I know has done that, any good parent, I should say. They just help lift the child up. They keep teaching them and guiding them, and they have patience. And I really believe that's how God is with us when he knows we haven't done these things before. He knows we feel unqualified. He knows we don't have necessarily the skill set to get there, maybe the resources or whatever, but he's a God that's going to help coach us along the way. And he's going to help, clean up the mess or clean the scrapes and give us Band-Aids and
kiss the boo-boo.
Yeah, but then tell us, all right, get back up again. Like we got some more walking to do.
Yeah.
But that's the God that we serve. And so I love that you're saying that because it's just confirmation to me.
Yeah. And I think too, like, scripture says that he's able to do far above anything we could ask or think. And so if you can think about it and if it's something you can conceptualize in your mind, you're thinking too small.
Wow.
But sometimes we can so put ourselves in a box, put God in a box by thinking, well, that's just my personality type. I'm scared of heights, so I'm not going to go parasailing, or, I've never done a podcast before and I don't know what we're going to talk about, but, so I don't think it's my thing. But instead, just asking those questions, what if? Well, what if I'm really good at it? Or what if I am making new memories with my kids and enjoy it and want to do it 2 more times, but that's what I love. It's so inspiring to hear somebody like yourself that's 59 that is still wanting to dream and to ask those questions and just adventure with God, because so many people right now, especially with the earth being so in turmoil like it is, and it looks dark, and people are kind of just wanting to retreat even more and isolate and just say, well, and just kind of hunker down and until things blow over or Jesus comes back or whatever it is. But like, I really believe God wants us to extend right now and to not stop the dreaming and not stop the building and not stop, going out and building new relationships and meeting new people, because his kingdoms and will is still being done on the earth, and he uses us through that. And so I love how you inspire your church, Bev, as well. That feisty attitude that says, well, hey, if you're a good Christian, you should invite me in our church too. I love that you challenge your congregants too, just to like not stay stuck in patterns or different. You bring different perspective as well, and you challenge each other. I know they challenge you, and like you said, you give each other grace, and so I love that at Full Faith too.
That's pretty much how I got myself on the mission field too. Pedro had to take me to Ecuador because, it sounded like a great adventure and a good challenge, and yeah, I got us all into that too. And the very first time that I went to Ecuador, I was late, because I said, hey, if y'all are doing that, I want to go. And he said, well, Beverly, we're just going next week. I said, well, where's your plane going? I could get a ticket. And he didn't know what to do with me. And he was like, okay. And so we were all I was going to fly from Northwest Arkansas, and they were going to fly from Springfield. And we all were supposed to meet and then take the next plane over to Ecuador. Well, I realized I was on the plane to Ecuador and they were not. And
no.
their first plane had gotten delayed. And I'm thinking, well, Lord, now what are we going to do? I'm on a plane. I'm going to Ecuador. I don't know who I'm going to meet, what I'm supposed to do, what language they're going to even speak. And I'm on the plane by myself without anybody else.
Oh my goodness.
And I just started praying and I said, well, this is a good adventure, isn't it? And I'm just praying. And I said, I just can't believe they didn't make this plane. I just can't believe it. And I walked up and down the aisles 2 or 3 times and they sure were not on that plane. They said that they were in the airport and they saw me take off, but they didn't. There wasn't a thing they could do about it.
No.
So I was just praying and thinking about it and asking God what we were going to do, in an airport where everybody spoke a different language. And the lady next to me said, did I hear you say that your friends did not make the plane? And she said it in English. And then she said, all the rest of the stuff to her husband and her kids in Spanish. And I said, oh, God, you're so good. And she said, honey, you don't worry about it. We'll even take you home if we need to. I said, good, because I don't know where I'm supposed to even go. But when I got to Ecuador, one of our missionaries there was waiting for me. She couldn't speak English, but she had a sign with my name on it. So I knew I was in the right place. And then they got there the next day. But, in Ecuador, I didn't speak the language. And so I had to rely totally on God's presence and his spirit to lead me and to do things, to lay hands on people and to know what they needed, just totally on God. And that was a whole new experience that I needed too, for leading a church, because I didn't have that. If I wouldn't have went out there and done crazy things, I wouldn't have had that experience to know how to lead and just to listen. And I definitely think that in the times and the seasons that we're in the last days, and if not, we're the closest we've ever been in history to it. And God is shaking everything that can be shaken that's man-made. But he says when he tears things down, we have to build things up. And so he's calling all the workers for the harvest. He's telling everybody to be in your places with bright, shiny faces and to listen to me, and I will give you the plan, because we carry the light within us just being who we are. But we have to be out there in the world for the world to, receive our light. So most definitely this is the time. And I've seen him do new things around here. He's putting houses together that I never thought would be together. And, there were 6 or 7 churches, different churches having prayer meeting together in our house this past week. And it was just beautiful. And God orchestrated all that. I just said, yeah, you could use our church. And it was just beautiful. And I'm excited about the things that are happening. He's pouring out his spirit, and it's exciting, girls.
Yeah.
I just, I wake up every day wondering what we're going to get into today, God, because it's always something new. My husband and I, we worked together side by side for 25 years, and praise God, that God put us together, and he knows us both well enough. And I used to work in the workshop with him every day and be, right there. I knew what he was going to do, and I knew what my plan was going to be for the day. Well, the Lord just took those plans and said, we're not doing it that way anymore. You're going to be the clay on the wheel. And some days you can be out there, but don't make a plan to be. And, I never said that to my husband, but I did notice he has workers now.
He adapted.
So, yeah, he adapted, and they probably show up on time and do whatever he says for them to do. So it's all working out well. So awesome. God will just work it out. Don't get so caught up in the lists and the schedules that we can't just be open to where he asks us to be. And that's what we're supposed to be the lights of the world, be the salt, to the world, and be about kingdom business. because we don't have a lot of time left, and God's using every one of us, and he says every one of us is important. Don't look at your backstory, look at what I'm going to put in front of you, but
Amen.
if he calls you to it, he'll lead you through it, and he's certainly done that for me. I certainly didn't have a plan for this, but he has made it something beautiful and something supernatural out of something that was very ordinary and very natural.
That's good. Well, this has been a breath of fresh air, this
Yeah.
episode. It's just so good to just hear about new adventures, and it's inspiring. I know this is going to inspire our listeners as well. And so, do you guys have a website for your church, or where can they listen to sermons and things like that?
Well, sometimes they get recorded, and sometimes our internet out here even lets me put it on Facebook. So
Okay.
just I have a Facebook page that's Beverly Blankenship, and I don't have very good internet yet. My husband signed us up for new satellite internet, but he said there was only 500,000 people in front of us. So I don't know how long that'll be till we get it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they can
So
find you there.
That's all it is right now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're blessed to know you, blessed to have you on today. And I know our listeners are going to be blessed and inspired too, guys. I hope that this encourages you to go out and just be and hear what he has to say
Amen.
for your life. But just don't be afraid to take those chances, to be vulnerable, and just watch what he does with it in the process. And I'm excited to be friends with you as well, Bev, and just continue to watch what he's doing in your guys' life and ministry as you just continue to step out. So
yeah. And what is the service time at Full Faith on Sundays if someone's vacationing in the Eureka Springs area on a Sunday?
Sure. We meet every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. And on Wednesday nights from 5 to 6, we have a food pantry. Right now it's a drive-through food pantry, and we just serve people food and boxes of produce or boxes of pantry items. And we give that out. And then we have prayer meeting from 6:30 to 7. And, everybody's welcome. And we just do what the Lord's called us to do. Right now it's feeding his sheep, literally. And on Sunday mornings, feeding his sheep with the word of God.
That's awesome.
Yep,
Love
great.
that. Well, thank you again, Pastor Bev, for coming on, taking the time to be with us today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and rate us and share it with a friend. If you know someone that just needs encouragement today, that maybe they're stuck in a rut, or they're just worried about their to-do list, or afraid to step out and try something new, make sure you share this message with them, because this could be the very thing that pushes them into everything that God has for them. So we love y'all, and we will see you next week.
take care.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. One of the greatest ways we come up higher is through worship, and it's our desire to help you create meaningful worship moments through the music that we create.
Yeah, you can stream our music on Google, Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you stream music. And physical copies of our albums are available at our store at aliciaandwhitney.com.
So join us in coming up higher together through worship.